Incredible moment, elderly black woman calls her son, U.S. Attorney General, after cop stop her. Ethel Johnson's heart brimmed with joy as she left church, her fingers brushing over the small floral print of her dress. She wore that same dress to every service for the past decade. Each Sunday, it became a canvas for her spirit and embodiment of hope and resilience. Today, the sun cast a warm glow over Maple Creek, illuminating her path home with a golden hue. She exchanged smiles and waves with neighbors, her laughter ringing out like a familiar melody. But in an instant, this harmonious symphony shattered. Two young police officers pulled her over, their sirens slicing through the peace. Ethel's heart skipped. She turned on her blinker and eased to the side, her palms moist against the steering wheel. The nervous tension in the air was thick, palpable. What could they want, she wondered, scanning their faces for any kindness. "Ma'am, we need to talk," one officer said, his tone sharpening as if he had already formed opinions. Ethel's spirit faltered, but she steadied herself. She offered her usual warm smile, though it felt strained. "Good afternoon, officers. How can I help you?" Yet their questions lingered with suspicion, folding into a tension born out of quick judgments and assumptions. Ethel felt the ache of prejudice wrap around her heart like an unwanted cloak. The questions cut deeper than they should have. She was an active member of this community, a lighthouse guiding others through life's storms. But all that history didn't seem to matter now. Chills crept up her spine as she gripped her cell phone tightly. In that very moment, Ethel found the courage that defined her. She dialed her son, Barry. The U.S. Attorney General answered on the first ring, his anxious voice sounding from a world far removed from her small-town realities. "Mom. What is going on?" "Barry, I'm okay, but I need you." His busy life of high-profile debates and courtroom battles faded as he heard the fear in her voice. Memories of her strength flashed through his mind, the stories of her standing up against injustices, the resilience woven into their family fabric. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. His heart raced as he rushed out the door, leaving behind the chaos of his life. The drive felt like a lifetime, the urgency pulsing through him. Ethel, on the other hand, remained poised, reflecting on the countless times she had fought against bias. As Barry arrived, tension thickened in the air. The young officers, focused on their duty, began to sense her quiet strength. Ethel stood tall, reminding them of the dignity engraved within every soul. "Why are we here, officers?" she asked, her voice steady, but her heart fluttering. All her experiences, the struggles, triumphs, the lessons she shared with Barry echoed in her mind. In that charged moment, Ethel leaned into hope, but a new uncertainty emerged. Could they find common ground? Would her voice be strong enough to challenge the assumptions weighing down the young officers? As the sun dipped low, casting a soft glow, the atmosphere held its collective breath. What would come next? Would family ties and the call for justice prove stronger than initial doubts? The answer hung just out of reach, as the noise of the world faded away, leaving only the fragile heartbeat of understanding. Ethel took a deep breath. The moment stretched as she stood between the two officers and her son, who had just parked his car. He looked determined, his shoulders squared as he stepped toward her. Barry quickly assessed the situation, his eyes darting from the officer's expressions to his mother's calm demeanor. "Mom, I'm here," he said softly, a reassuring tone underlaid with urgency. He placed a hand on Ethel's shoulder, grounding her amid the fear swirling around them. "Officers, can you tell us why you stopped my mother?" Barry's voice carried authority but also concern. Ethel felt a rush of warmth at her son's protective stance. Barry was the little boy she had raised, the one who always wanted justice for everyone even before he knew what injustice meant. We received a report of a suspicious driving pattern in this area, the first officer responded, glancing at his partner for backup, and we pulled over this vehicle as part of standard procedure. Ethel's brow furrowed. Standard procedure. The words felt like a weight on her chest. I've lived in this town my whole life, she said gently, holding the gaze of the officer before her. I'm just coming home from church. I've never hurt anybody. The second officer exchanged a hesitant look with his partner. Ethel's steady voice pierced through their rigid defenses. Maybe they didn't expect her to stand her ground. Maybe they underestimated the fire she held within. In that moment, she felt the need to speak her truth. Listen, officers. I understand that you're doing your job, but what I don't understand is why my mere presence here evokes suspicion. Her voice deepened, firm. The world can be loud with its judgments, but I stand here today as a mother, a grandmother, and a proud member of this community. We have to do better. Barry squeezed her shoulder. Ethel felt his strength near her, shining like a beacon. The officers exchanged glances again, but this time there was a hint of uncertainty, a faltering in their posture. Ethel recognized the shift, the tiniest crack in their walls of assumption. This was her moment. All those years of fighting for what was right against a tide of bias had led her here. I'm not your enemy. I am a part of this community, and so are you, she continued. Let us change the narrative. Let us choose understanding over suspicion, compassion over judgment. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of amber and soft pink, a stark contrast to the heaviness in the air. An unexpected silence lingered, filled with the murmurs of passing cars and the distant laughter of children playing. The truth is, Mom, Barry spoke again, his eyes filled with resolve, this isn't just about today. It's about every person in our community who feels what you feel right now. We have to break the cycle. The first officer looked down, his brows knitted together. But inside the lingering silence, Ethel could hear distant clamor. The rumble of change. The desire for understanding clashed with resistance, but hope flickered like the last rays of sun. Would the officers embrace this moment to listen? Would they allow themselves to hear her story echo through their own? As Ethel held her breath, waiting for an answer, she wondered if this would be the turning point they all needed. Would they step forward together, or would they retreat to the safety of their old ways? The air was charged, the future hanging like a tightly wound string, ready to snap. And then, unspoken questions pulsed heavily between them. What change could come from this moment? Would it be enough to shift perceptions and light the way forward? The first officer hesitated, glancing at his partner, who seemed similarly torn. The unusual encounter was probably not what either of them expected in their routine patrol. Ethel could see the weight of their badges pressing down on them as they processed her words, weighing their next move like a stone atop a scale. Man, the first officer finally found his voice. Didn't he mean to create fear? Ethel interjected, her voice steady and controlled. You see, fear is a tool that divides us. It's what keeps us from seeing each other for who we truly are. Barry's grip tightened on her shoulder, anchoring her, as uncertainty began to fade from the officer's expressions, replaced by something softer, contagious curiosity mixed with a blink of embarrassment. It was as if the humanity she poured into her words began to seep into their own defenses, challenging preconceived notions. Let us talk, Barry said, taking an authoritative yet amicable step forward. Let us make this a moment where we break down walls instead of building them higher. You got the report on my mother, but what about the stories behind it? The second officer shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to the pavement, ashamed. We're sorry, Ma'am. It's just protocol. We see so many things, our instinct is to react. Ethel took a step closer, closing the distance. She could feel his fear of doing the wrong thing, fear of being seen as insensitive. And I get that, but you know what? Sometimes our instinct leads us astray. Sometimes it leads us to assume. It's fear that fuels suspicion, and suspicion that divides people. Children in the distance laughed, their innocent joy cutting through the tension. Ethel's heart ached at the thought of a world where those children might one day face scrutiny based solely on their appearance. What if their laughter turned to confusion? She needed this moment not just for herself, but for them as well. "Mom," Barry said softly, breaking Ethel's thoughts. "This isn't just about us. It's about what comes next." He turned to the officers once more. "What's the next step? How do we keep this conversation going? Because it can't just end here." The first officer straightened slightly, the hint of understanding flickering in his eyes. "You're right. We need to hear stories like yours. Not just today, but every day. Maybe we can set up a community meeting. Invite people to talk." Ethel nodded, taking in their shifting attitudes. This was at the potential for change, for real dialogue. "That's a start, officer. It may take time, but understanding takes practice. It takes the willingness to hear, to face our fears together." The second officer nodded, newfound determination in his voice. "We're willing to try." Ethel couldn't help but smile. Together, they were beginning to reshape the narrative brick by brick, word by word. She saw in their eyes the reflection of hope, glimmering just like the horizon that now glowed with promise. "Thank you," she said, her voice tinged with relief. "It takes courage to change. I hope we can all find that courage together." As they stood there, the sun finally dipped beneath the horizon, casting the sky in deep hues of indigo. It felt like a curtain closing on an act of their story, a promising pause in which they all took their first breath after a long-held silence. But Ethel knew this was merely the beginning. The road ahead still beckoned with uncertainty. Would they all stay committed to the change they spoke of? Just then, a voice rang out in the distance, and Ethel turned. A car pulled up. The driver stepped out, his coat belying an air of importance. Barry straightened, recognition dawning in his expression. "Isn't that?" But before he could finish, the officer's radio crackled, interrupting the unfolding moment. "We have a situation at the community center." Ethel's heart raced. The fabric of change felt ever so delicate in her hands, and now, with this new urgency signaling danger, she wondered, would they step up again? Would the officers show the same courage when faced with a new challenge? Ethel's heart pounded in her chest, an echo of worry rippling through her. The urgency in the officer's voice cut through the optimism she had clung to moments before. Barry looked equally tense, his youthful face now taut with concern. "What is going on at the community center?" Barry stepped toward the officer, his expression turning serious. "Is everyone okay?" The first officer hesitated before responding, his eyes darting toward the red and blue lights that danced in the distance. "We don't have all the details yet. Just that there's a disturbance possibly involving some local kids." "Kids?" Ethel felt a rush of panic. What kind of disturbance? The second officer's face reflected the seriousness of the situation. "We're not sure. But it's critical we get there fast." Ethel felt the warmth of her connection to the officer's fracture beneath the sudden threat. Would they unintentionally feed into the cycle of fear they had just begun to challenge? "Let us go with you," Barry said, his voice strong. "We can help. We know the neighborhood. We can talk to the kids." Ethel agreed, the urge to protect the innocence of those children pulling her forward. "We have to see what's happening. Every moment counts." The officer nodded, gratitude mingling with apprehension in his gaze. They jumped into the patrol car, the engine roaring to life, the urgency palpable in the growing silence. Ethel could see the tension in Barry's jaw as they sped through the streets, the lights outside blurring into abstract streaks. As they approached the community center, shouts echoed off the walls, mingling with the distant crackle of radios and the sirens that blared in the air. A knot twisted in Ethel's stomach. She caught a glimpse of a small crowd gathered in a semicircle, a mass of energy and chaos. "Stay close to us, ma'am. the first officer instructed, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Ethel's heart raced as they parked. Rushing out of the car, Ethel scanned the scene. A group of teens stood their ground, some filming with their phones, others yelling. Among them, she noticed a boy she recognized from the neighborhood, a bright kid who always wore a smile. But now, the sparks of animosity in his eyes shocked her. "Barry!" Ethel grasped his arm, her voice trembling. "We need to step in. They're upset. We have to help them see we're on their side." Without waiting for a response, she stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Everyone, listen. We're here to talk. Let us work together." The crowd turned toward her, a mix of surprised looks flashing across their faces. The shouts began to die down, a swirling mix of confusion replacing the earlier tension. There was a moment of silence, and then Barry, standing beside her, chimed in with passion. "We understand why you're angry. But let us find a way to express that without hurting each other." The officers watched, their initial response to call for backup replaced by an attentive stance. They, too, were starting to lean into the idea of understanding rather than confrontation, but before Ethel could absorb the changing energy, she heard a voice from the back of the crowd rise above the rest. A young woman stood, her defiant expression unmistakable. "What do you know about our struggles? You. A woman who calls the police on us?" Ethel's heart sank. She felt the weight of the woman's words hit like ice. "You're right," Ethel admitted, pain lacing her voice. "I can't fully understand. But I'm here now, willing to listen. Let us share our stories. It's time we connect, not divide." Behind her, Barry and the officers exchanged glances, realizing the pivotal moment unfolding. But just then, the crowd shifted as another car pulled up, the sound of chaos intensifying with the arrival of more police. Ethel instinctively stepped back, worried would they help or make everything worse. As the officers emerged to manage the scene, Ethel felt the tension build again. The flicker of hope she had ignited with her words teetered on the precipice of doubt. Would everyone listen? "Stay with me," she whispered to Barry, clutching his hand tighter. "We have to keep this conversation alive." But all she could think was, would it be enough? And would the real work of bridging connections begin or shatter before her eyes? The stakes had never felt higher. Ethel's heart raced as she stood at the edge of the crowd, pulse quickening with each new arrival of police cars. The air crackled with uncertainty and anger, and she felt every gaze in the swirling mass of teens weighing on her. A sun-drenched afternoon had morphed into a scene framed by chaos and tension. The young woman who had challenged her stepped forward, a storm of frustration radiating from her. "You don't know us. You think you can just come in here and talk to us like you care. Where were you when things went wrong?" Ethel swallowed hard, searching for the right words. She knew what that girl felt. Did she ever really see them? Did she ever understand? But those weren't questions for her to answer alone. "You're right," Ethel replied, voice trembling slightly. "I don't know enough. I haven't listened enough. But today, I'm here to change that." As silence gripped the crowd, Barry stepped forward, emboldened by Ethel's courage. "We want to understand. Please tell us what you're feeling," he urged. His earnestness carried like a beacon through the sea of doubt. The young woman's resolve appeared to soften. She looked from Barry to Ethel, and Ethel's heart ached for the pain she saw beneath the surface. "Do you really want to understand?" the girl asked, skepticism laced through her tone. "Yes," Ethel replied, desperation coloring her voice. "We're willing to listen, and not just today. We can take what you say and find ways to make changes. Not just words, we want action." Around them, murmurs began to ripple through the crowd. Some had lowered their phones, intrigued by this unexpected dialogue. Others exchanged glances, contemplating this small shift in energy. Another voice broke through the uncertainty. "You think you can fix everything?" a boy shouted, anger flashing through his eyes. The system is stacked against us. No one cares what happens to us. Ethel felt her stomach tighten, but she steadied her breath, finding resolve amid the storm of voices. I understand your frustration. I can't fix everything alone, and I've contributed to the problem. But I need to hear your stories. We can't pretend they don't exist anymore. A ripple of energy, raw and potent, passed through the group. The officers, too, seemed to sense the shift. Instead of enforcing the anxious order of the day, they positioned themselves to observe and listen. Suddenly, the young woman took a step closer. Fine, I'll share. But only if you promise to come back and talk to us again. You really want to change? Ethel's heart soared. Absolutely. I promise we'll be here to listen and take action. Just then, a large, stern-looking officer approached them. If you all can settle down, we can avoid any further issues. Let us keep this peaceful. A collective tension hung in the air like a thundercloud about to unleash. Ethel noticed the heartbeat of uncertainty flare up again. The young woman glanced around, weighing whether to accept Ethel's offer of dialogue or to unleash her anger against the uniformed authority before them. Please, Ethel implored, her voice steady despite the chaos. Let us keep talking. We have to do this. You deserve to be heard. As the connection between Ethel and the crowd started to build, the surrounding noise seemed to fade. The vulnerability of their shared humanity cut through the intensity of the moment, and hope surged within Ethel like a dormant seed beginning to sprout, but then, a loud bang echoed in the distance, cutting through the newfound calmness. The crowd jumped, whispers spiraled into shouts, and Ethel felt the ground shift beneath her feet. What was that? Barry grabbed Ethel's arm, eyes wide with alarm, as shadows beckoned from beyond the gathering. Ethel's stomach turned, uncertain of how this fragile moment could hold against the unexpected shadows that lurked ahead. Would they crush the growing dialogue before it could take root? Keep talking. Ethel shouted, knowing this moment could tip either way, teetering precariously on the edge of change or collapse. Would they stay united, or would the fear take over? The next few moments would decide everything. Ethel's voice barely made it through the rising tide of panic, but she held her ground. We need to stay focused. The loud bang echoed again, closer this time, and confusion swelled in the crowd. Ethel felt Barry's grip tightening around her arm, as if he sensed the shift of energy transforming into something darker. The young woman who had agreed to speak stepped back, eyes wide as she scanned the crowd, searching for something to anchor her response. Everyone. Ethel called, her heart pounding. Stay calm. Focus on each other, right now. The murmurs quieted, and a few uncertain faces turned to her. Ethel met their eyes, feeling an urgency to break through the tension. This is our moment to talk, to share. Let us not lose it. A few people nodded, but others looked ready to flee. The primal instinct to protect oneself surged, colliding with the desire to connect. She could see their fear morphing into anger, the kind that wanted to explode outward but wasn't sure where to aim. Then, another sound, a screeching siren, joined the chaos. Ethel's gaze shot skyward. Bright lights spun, flashing through the streets like angry fireflies. This was no longer just a conversation, it was an uproar demanding attention. Trust me. Barry called out again, raising his hands. This isn't the time to back down. The young woman hesitated, glancing at the officer who still loomed nearby. You say you're here to listen. But how can we trust that? She challenged, her voice quivering with mixed emotions. Ethel took a deep breath, piecing together her answer, knowing this opportunity wouldn't come again. Because I'm here to start a conversation that matters. I can't change anything on my own, but together we can try. You need to feel that, to believe in it. A few more anxious faces turned her way, longing for hope, searching for the flicker of connection she was offering. But the loud sirens continued to wail, making it difficult to hold on to that spark. It's our time, Barry spoke up, his voice rising above the din. Nobody cares more than we do. Let us reclaim this moment. You're the ones who can show us how to listen, how to make a difference. The tension began to shimmer, the air growing thick with a mix of apprehension and anticipation. Ethel was desperate to keep the momentum alive. She could feel a flicker of recognition in several eyes, the small but undeniable understanding that they were all on the same side. A hand shot up from the back of the crowd, a young man's voice breaking through. What do you want from us? What do you want to change? Ethel felt the weight of the moment. It was loaded. I want to understand your struggles. I want to learn what we can change together. But for that to happen, we need to talk, to share, and yes, to trust each other. The crowd was divided, torn between trusting Ethel and retreating behind walls built from skepticism and hurt. The minute stretched, tension holding its breath. Suddenly, an older woman stepped forward from the crowd, her face lined with years of struggle but also resolve. You don't know the half of it, child, she said softly, her voice steadying the chaos around them. You're right. We need to talk. But you need to hear the truth, not just the pretty version. Ethel nodded, heart pounding at the unexpected courage this woman displayed. Yes. Tell us the truth. Then a frantic figure rushed through the growing crowd, eyes wide with distress. Mom! Mom, don't! They were unmistakably searching for the older woman, panic written across their face. Ethel froze. There was something familiar about that voice. She strained to see who it was, but the chaos twisted her view, but at that moment, the sirens didn't matter. The whispers of uncertainty were silenced as their eyes began to widen. It's him, it's the Attorney General. Someone whispered in disbelief. Ethel's heart raced all over again. What could this mean? That they were at a crossroads, a chance for real dialogue or disaster. Would this invite more voices, a louder confrontation, or a chance to build real bridges? Ethel's breath caught. Would the shadows now looming be their undoing or a chance for powerful change? She couldn't tell. But one thing was clear, they had a decision to make. The moment had come to see where this might lead. Would they step towards trust, or retreat into silence? Everything hung in the balance. The commotion thickened around them like fog rolling in, clouding everything. Ethel's mind raced with fear and hope intertwined. Blinking, she tried to catch a glimpse of the frantic figure, the desperation of the young person screaming for someone who had the power to change everything. Mom! The young man shouted again, weaving through the mass of bodies. He finally broke free, his face etched with urgency and dread. Ethel's heart sank. The anguish reflected in that boy's eyes echoed in her own chest, a heavy reminder of everything at stake. As the older woman turned towards her son, Ethel could see the flicker of recognition sparking between them, a shared history deeper than the moment unfolding. Please, don't. The young man's voice cracked. We can't do this now. Hold on. Barry shouted, stepping in front of Ethel, blocking her from the mayhem. Let us figure out what's happening. Ethel could no longer stand in the background. She pushed through the crowd, with each step needing to see this connection. She reached the front just as the two faced each other in the chaos, mother, shaking, and son, filled with a mix of pride and worry. Dante. The older woman gasped, her voice trembling. I'm here. It's okay. With fierce determination, Dante stepped forward, standing between the officer and his mother. You're not listening to her. Why should we trust you? He demanded. The rawness in his voice gripped Ethel. Each word was like a plea that hung in the air. Suddenly, the Attorney General, a tall figure clad in an imposing suit, approached, his handlers trailing behind him like shadows. He absorbed the scene, a mix of confusion and concern flashing across his usually confident face. Ethel could see his lips move, a murmur caught in the whirlwind his mother's name. Mom! What are you doing here? He said, stepping closer, reaching for her hand. His grip was firm, protective. But all Ethel could focus on was the energy shifting around them. The crowd was no longer quiet, whispers of disbelief bounced through the people. Ethel could sense hearts beating faster, caught between fear and a desperate yearning to be heard. She reached out her arms. "This is our moment," she called. "We need to listen." Dante glanced between Ethel and his mother, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Then he turned to the Attorney General, voice cracking, "They need you to listen. We've been ignored for too long." The older woman steadied herself and took a deep breath, her voice laden with wisdom. "Today, we must gather these voices, the pain, the fights, the dreams. It's not just about talking, it's about truly hearing each other, isn't it?" Ethel's heart swelled. This wasn't just a conflict, it was an opportunity. As the crowd absorbed the weight of those words, a collective shift happened. The fear dimmed, leaving room for hope. People were stepping forward, ready to share. Hot adrenaline coursed through Ethel's veins. She stepped beside the Attorney General. "If you want to listen, we're here. Every story matters, let us bridge that divide." His eyes locked on hers, a hint of understanding dawning. This wasn't just a government figure anymore, he was a son, a brother, standing at the precipice of change. But just as fragments of agreement began to form in the crowd, a new sound pierced the air, a chorus of sirens swirling closer. Tension swelled as the bright lights danced ominously again. Ethel's breath hitched in her throat, uncertainty looming once more. Will this be a breakthrough or more of the same? She thought, feeling the echoes of every voice that had come before. What would happen now? It was a moment hanging in the in-between, and she was desperate to see what direction they would take. Would they rise together, or let fear pull them apart? The air buzzed with possibility, and Ethel could feel the world waiting, holding its breath. As the sirens wailed closer, Ethel felt the electrical charge in the air, the palpable tension simmering among the crowd. Faces turned, eyes darted, and breathing quickened, each heartbeat echoing the uncertainty and fervent need for change that washed over them all. She could sense the resolve to push through the chaos, but could they find strength in such turmoil? Dante turned his head, taking in the sight of flashing lights and the approaching police cars. Fear mixed with anger danced behind his eyes, and he reached for his mother's hand tightly. "Mom, we can't let them do this." "Not now," he insisted, his voice firm. "Dante, they're here to keep us safe," his mother replied, her voice soft yet steady. But Ethel could see the doubt behind her words. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her own racing pulse. "Safe?" Dante scoffed, shaking his head. "Does that include silencing us?" Ethel's heart raced. The urgency of the moment felt like a thunderstorm raging tightly in her chest. She edged closer, yearning to be a part of the dialogue. "We're here to share our truth," she yelled, injecting her voice into the fray. The Attorney General shifted, a flicker of concern crossing his features. He managed to break from his mother's grasp, stepping closer to Ethel, who held her ground. There was a dawning realization in his eyes, a spark of solidarity emanating from her words amidst the noise. "Everyone deserves to be heard," Ethel continued, more fervently this time. The crowd began to quiet down, struck by the power of her plea. Dante stepped up beside her, standing shoulder to shoulder. "We're tired of being treated like ghosts in our own lives. Are we just supposed to vanish into the night while you all control our future?" A ripple of murmurs floated through the crowd as Ethel saw heads nodding in agreement. The Attorney General, shifting his weight, took a deep breath. I want to listen. I truly do." His voice was softer now, almost vulnerable. But before he could say more, a figure in uniform emerged from the flashing lights. A stern-looking officer made his way towards the group with an air of authority. Fear crept back into the hearts of the people, mirroring that tight, anxious tension. Would they be met with aggression? Would their courage to speak be crushed under the weight of force? Ethel's thoughts raced. Would all the steps they had taken lead to a dead end? The officer stopped in front of them, surveying the faces, his expression unreadable. Ethel took a step forward. Please, we're just trying to be heard. We're tired of silence. Let us talk. We're here for solutions, not confrontation. The crowd held its breath. Eyes shifted from the officer to the Attorney General, a silent hope stirring among those gathered. Could they actually create something meaningful from this chaos? Just as the officer opened his mouth to respond, a loud shout pierced the air from the back of the crowd. You think this is enough? We need change now. The tension thickened again, hearts pounding harder with every passing moment. Ethel glanced around, and she could see courage igniting in the eyes of everyone around her. The voices that had once felt so isolated now merged into a powerful chorus. Will their voices resonate loud enough to break through the walls of the past? What would happen next could change everything. And there, in the midst of it all, Ethel felt one thing deeply: hope. But beneath that hope lingered the stark reality that change comes at a cost. Would they be ready to pay it? The officer's words hung in the air as he looked between the Attorney General and the crowd. Tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, and fear coiled tightly in Ethel's stomach. Step back. This is a controlled situation, the officer commanded, lifting his chin with authority, but Ethel saw a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. Maybe he wasn't there just for control. Controlled? Dante's voice crackled with disbelief. Look around. Control has failed us for years. His voice rose, a defiant echo against the sirens and honking horns. The crowd stirred, emboldened by Dante's fire. Ethel could feel it, that ripple of courage spreading like wildfire. People began to chant, their words like a drum beating unison in protest. We want to be heard. We want to be seen. Ethel moved closer, her heart hammering as she locked eyes with the Attorney General. This isn't a riot. This is our life. This is our reality. You're part of our fight. Help us make a change. His expression faltered, awareness washing over him. Ethel felt a surge of energy as he took another step closer. The distance closing between them felt monumental, like they were crossing barriers constructed by years of systemic neglect. Look, he said, raising his hands in a conciliatory gesture. I hear you. I promise I hear you. He turned to the officer, desperation dancing in his voice. Can we talk? Really talk? The officer hesitated, visibly torn. Ethel sensed the moment hanging delicately, like a thin strand ready to snap. I can't let the situation escalate, he murmured, but the protesters' chants grew louder. The noise felt like an ancient drumbeat demanding justice, and it urged him to shift his stance. Please, Ethel said, as her eyes locked with the officer's. We're scared, but we're here for peace. We need to be heard, not silenced. No matter what happens next, this moment matters. The officer dropped his shoulders, glancing at the Attorney General as if searching for guidance. You want to talk? Let us talk, he said reluctantly, but Ethel understood it was a step forward. Dante squeezed her hand, his eyes shining with hope and determination. Let us turn this into something real. Ethel beamed, buoyed by the wave of energy rolling from the crowd. She could feel their collective hope rising, weaving through the air like an unbreakable thread. Together, she said, raising her voice above the buzz of emotions, together, we can change this. As the police officer signaled for the crowd to calm down, strange silence settled briefly, as if the world paused to listen. Faces filled the panorama before her, parents filled with worry, young people ignited with passion, elders filled with wisdom. And just like that, hope was woven into the fabric of their shared struggle. But deep down, Ethel was also aware of the precariousness of the moment. Would this dialogue be a breakthrough, or just more empty promises? There lingered a question, heavy yet hopeful: what would truly change in their lives if their voices connected with action? The murmurs of the crowd seemed to fade as the Attorney General stepped forward. Let us not stop at words, he said, voice steady. What if we could bring real change today? What do you want to see from your leaders? As he leaned in, eyebrows knitted in earnestness, Ethel felt the weight of the question in the air. Where would this conversation lead them? Would their dreams for a better tomorrow shape the future, or was it just a fleeting hope? The anticipation crackled like static, leaving her breathless and poised on the edge of possibility. And so, standing at the threshold of change, Ethel couldn't help but wonder, would they find the strength to carry their voices into reality, or would fear silence them once more? The stillness in the air held a collective breath, as emotions hung like a thick fog. Ethel stood strong, surrounded by the pulsing energy of concern and hope. She could hear the heartbeat of the crowd matching her own, a rising rhythm that promised potential change. Listen to us. We want dialogue. Dante called out again, his voice now a fierce, unyielding force. Ethel's heart swelled with pride. This was the moment they had all been waiting for, a chance for real connection, not just noise. The Attorney General nodded, grounding himself. Let us not just talk about change, he urged, his voice gaining momentum. Let us make commitments right here, right now. What do you need from law enforcement to feel safe and heard? The crowd shifted, uncertainty flickering like light through the cool evening. Ethel could see faces filled with hope, alongside lines etched deep by pain and frustration. With a gentle hand, she nudged Dante, and together, they stepped forward, raising their voices in solidarity. We need programs that empower our youth. We need connection, understanding, and budgets that serve our community, not penalize it. As their words echoed, a warmth spread, blossoming like flowers in spring. Murmurs and nods of agreement rippled through the crowd, transforming fear into determination. The officer glanced at the Attorney General, uncertainty now replaced with shared purpose. Okay. The officer chimed in, his voice gaining strength. Let us set up meetings, bring your community leaders, your youth, and let us discuss practical steps. What about a community watchdog? Resolution teams that guide discussions between us and the neighborhoods. Ethel felt her heart lift. This was real, you could almost touch the sincerity vibrating in their words. She turned, scanning the faces of her neighbors, searching for the spark she knew lay within them. Let us also focus on education, she interjected, her voice steady. Teaching about respect and understanding from a young age could shift the narrative. That builds understanding and long-term change. Smiles began to spread as conversations ignited in whispers around her. The air tingled with excitement, a clear chance to rewrite their story, where they weren't just victims but active participants in their future. Can we promise more community nights where we just listen, not just react? Dante suggested, his intensity radiating. We have so many stories that can help us bridge gaps. Yes. The crowd cheered back, voices mingling to create a beautiful chorus united for a shared cause. In that moment, Ethel caught sight of the older woman who had first stepped forward. Their eyes locked, and Ethel felt a warm surge of belonging. They were all in this together, warriors bound by hope and action. As the police officers exchanged glances, Ethel noticed their defenses soften. Duty no longer masked their humanity. Today, we commit, the first officer said, his voice resolute. To listening, learning, and taking action. We want change as much as you do. The Attorney General stepped closer, his tone earnest. We'll follow through. This is just the beginning. I promise to put those changes on the table. The cheers erupted from the crowd, voices intertwining with a melody of promise. Ethel stood at the center, tearing up as she felt the profound weight lift off her shoulders, a burden of fear, worry, doubt. In its place blossomed relief and palpable hope. As the sirens grew distant, fading to a soft hum, the reality began to set in. Together, they had woven a thread of connection that would guide them forward. Thank you, everyone, Ethel said, emotion trembling in her words. We are stronger together. Let us hold each other accountable, and most importantly let us keep talking. Moments passed, but the energy remained electric. There was a shared understanding of responsibility, along with a flame of urgency. Ethel glanced at Dante beside her, seeing the pride in his eyes mirrored in others' hope flickering but strong like a candle in the dark. They had begun to reshape their world, step by step, united voices echoing. their truth. Life would still challenge them, but together they could push through walls built on fear and misunderstanding. As the sun set behind the horizon, Ethel knew their journey had only just started. She felt a gentle warmth sweep over her heart, promising brighter days ahead. And in that defining moment, she realized that their voices, lifted in unison, could indeed inspire change. Hope was no longer a distant dream, it was now their beautiful, undeniable reality. Now, it's your turn. You need to subscribe now to the channel, so you won't miss the next exclusive stories illuminating transformation and connection. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread this message of hope. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this ending. Your voice matters, and don't wait not one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Let us keep the conversation alive together.